90 days after the collapse, the United States doesn't have 50 states anymore. It has maybe 30 territories controlled by whoever was strong enough and smart enough to seize the right cities at the right time. Not the biggest cities, not the richest cities, not the cities preppers think matter. The cities that become warlord capitals within 3 months aren't chosen randomly. They're chosen because they control something essential: a river that moves goods, a port that connects to the world, a transportation hub that controls distribution, a water source that entire regions depend on, a strategic position that lets you see threats coming and stop them before they arrive. The warlords who win aren't the ones who take New York or Los Angeles or Chicago. Those cities are too big, too chaotic, too resource-intensive to control. The warlords who win are the ones who take the cities that control the infrastructure everyone else needs, the cities that become choke points. The cities that extract tribute from everyone who wants to pass through or access what they control. Within 90 days, 7 specific cities become warlord capitals in every collapse scenario. Different warlords, different methods, but the same 7 cities, every time. Because geography and infrastructure don't change. The strategic value of these positions is permanent. The only question is who takes them fast enough and holds them well enough to become the regional power. New Orleans, the gateway warlord. 90% of the grain exported from the United States moves down the Mississippi River to New Orleans: corn, wheat, soybeans. The entire agricultural output of the Midwest flows through this single city on its way to the Gulf of Mexico and then to the world. New Orleans doesn't produce this food. New Orleans controls the gateway that this food must pass through. In collapse, this control becomes power, absolute power. The farmers upriver need access to New Orleans port to move their grain. The coastal communities need grain from upriver to eat. New Orleans sits in the middle, extracting tribute from both sides. The warlord who controls New Orleans controls the most valuable trade route in North America. The seizure happens in week 2. The existing gangs and organized crime in New Orleans aren't strong enough to take the port facilities alone. But they know the city. They know where the weaknesses are. When order collapses, they move on the port before anyone else understands what's valuable. By week 3, the port is under organized control. Not government control, warlord control. The consolidation takes 6 weeks. Different groups are fighting for control of different parts of the city: the ports, the river access points, the bridges, the fuel storage. By week 8, one group has emerged dominant. Usually, whoever controlled the port initially and successfully defended it against challenges. They've absorbed or destroyed the competing groups. New Orleans has a warlord. By day 90, the New Orleans warlord is extracting fees from every shipment that moves through the port. Grain going downriver pays. Food coming upriver pays. Fuel being transferred pays. The warlord doesn't care who's trading or what they're trading. The warlord just takes a cut of everything that moves through their territory. This is protection racket at continental scale. The geography makes New Orleans unchallengeable. You can't bypass New Orleans. The Mississippi River doesn't have alternative outlets to the Gulf that can handle the volume. You either pay the New Orleans warlord or you don't move your goods. There's no third option. This makes the New Orleans warlord one of the wealthiest and most powerful in North America within 3 months. The weaknesses are hurricanes and flooding. New Orleans is below sea level. Without functioning levees and pumps, the city floods. The warlord has to maintain enough infrastructure to keep the city dry and the port operational. This requires engineers, requires fuel, requires organization. The warlords who succeed in New Orleans are the ones who can run complex infrastructure while extracting maximum tribute, the ones who can't get washed away literally or figuratively. Memphis, the River King. Memphis sits at a different strategic point on the Mississippi. This is where Interstate 40 crosses the river. This is where east-west road traffic meets north-south river traffic. Memphis is a transfer point. Goods moving by water get transferred to trucks. Goods moving by truck get transferred to barges. This intermodal transfer function makes Memphis a choke point for two different transportation networks simultaneously. The collapse of long-haul trucking doesn't eliminate the need for Memphis. It increases it. Barges work without diesel trucks. River traffic continues when road traffic stops. Memphis becomes more valuable in collapse because it's the point where the working river system connects to the broken road system. Whoever controls Memphis controls the transfer between these systems. The agricultural hinterland around Memphis is massive. The Delta, the richest farmland in America within 100 miles of the city. This farmland keeps producing in collapse, maybe not at industrial scale, but it produces. And all that production has to move through Memphis to reach markets upriver or downriver. The Memphis Warlord taxes the entire agricultural output of the Delta without farming a single acre. The seizure is faster than New Orleans. Memphis is smaller, less complex. The existing criminal organizations and the street gangs consolidate quickly. By week 3, there's organized control of the riverfront and the Interstate 40 bridge. By week 5, that control has expanded to the entire downtown core and the port facilities. By week 7, whoever controls Memphis controls everything that crosses the river for 200 miles in either direction. The Memphis Warlord is running different operation than New Orleans Warlord. New Orleans is taxing international trade. Memphis is taxing regional trade and agriculture. The scale is smaller, but the control is tighter. Everything within 300 miles of Memphis that needs to cross the river or move goods north-south is paying the Memphis Warlord. This creates regional dominance that's absolute within the territory but doesn't extend much beyond it. The military assets near Memphis matter. Naval support activity mid-south. The Air National Guard base. If the Warlord can secure alliance with or control over military units that stayed in the area, Memphis becomes militarily defensible against any force that might try to take it. If the Warlord can't secure these assets, someone else will, and they'll use them to take Memphis from whoever's holding it. The competition for Memphis in the first 90 days is partly about the geography and partly about the military hardware. Denver, the Waterlord. Denver controls the headwaters. The rivers that flow from the Colorado Rockies provide water to 40 million people in 7 states. The Colorado River, the Arkansas River, the South Platte. These rivers start in the mountains around Denver. Whoever controls the mountains controls the water. Whoever controls the water controls everyone downstream. The collapse makes this control immediate and absolute. In normal times, water rights are legal fiction enforced by courts and treaties. In collapse, water rights are controlled by whoever holds the high ground and the infrastructure that diverts water. Denver is the high ground. The water diversions and dams and reservoirs that control flow to downstream states are in Colorado. The Denver Warlord inherits control of the most valuable resource in the American West. The demands start in week 4. Phoenix needs water. Las Vegas needs water. Los Angeles needs water. The entire Southwest depends on water that originates in Colorado. When the collapse prevents normal water delivery, these cities send delegations or threats or both to Denver demanding that water flow continue. The Denver Warlord's response determines the next decade of Western politics. Smart Warlord keeps the water flowing, but charges for it. Food from California in exchange for water. Fuel from Texas in exchange for water. Manufactured goods from wherever can still manufacture in exchange for water. The water becomes tribute collection mechanism. Denver exports water. Denver imports everything else. The trade balance is massively in Denver's favor because water is survival, and everything else is convenience or luxury. The geography of Denver creates defensible position. The city is at the base of the mountains. Attacking Denver from the east means attacking uphill. Attacking from the west means crossing the mountains, which is difficult without functioning vehicle infrastructure. The defensive position combined with control of water makes Denver nearly impregnable to anyone who doesn't want their water shut off. The climate challenges are significant. Denver is high altitude, cold winters. Growing season is short. The city can't feed itself from local agriculture. The Denver Warlord has to trade water for food aggressively, or the population starves during winter. This creates dependency that limits how much the Warlord can charge for water. Charge too much, and food stops coming. Then your population dies, and you lose your labor force and your military strength. The competition for Denver is between existing power structures. This is state capital. This is where Colorado government is headquartered. The National Guard, the state police, the military installations. Whoever controls these institutions at collapse controls Denver. If the institutions fracture, then street-level power competition determines who wins. Either way, by day 90, Denver has a warlord, and that warlord is negotiating water for food deals with every major population center in the Southwest. Omaha, the grain throne. Omaha is center of the American grain belt, the strategic grain reserve, the rail hub that moves grain from farms to coasts, the futures market infrastructure that priced grain globally. All of this is in Omaha. When markets collapse, the physical infrastructure remains. The grain elevators, the rail yards, the distribution network. Omaha controls the grain supply for the entire central United States. The military significance is immediate. Offutt Air Force Base, Strategic Command Headquarters, Nuclear Command and Control. If the military maintains any semblance of organization, they're maintaining it from Offutt. If military fragments, whoever controls Offutt controls nuclear weapons, or at least nuclear command infrastructure. This makes Omaha target, and simultaneously makes Omaha terrifyingly powerful. The civilian warlord path and the military warlord path converge in Omaha. Either the Air Force Base remains intact and becomes the power center, or the base fractures and civilian leadership seizes control of the city, while military remnants fight over the base. Either way, by week 8, someone controls both the grain infrastructure and the military assets. That combination creates superpower at regional scale. The grain control means leverage over everyone. Chicago needs grain. Kansas City needs grain. Minneapolis needs grain. Every city within 1,000 miles needs the grain that moves through Omaha's distribution network. The Omaha warlord can dictate terms to any city that needs to eat. This creates tributary relationships where entire cities are paying tribute to Omaha in exchange for grain access. The challenge is that Omaha is landlocked and surrounded by agricultural territory that's more powerful in aggregate than the city itself. The farmers grow the grain. Omaha just moves it and stores it. If the farmers organize and bypass Omaha, the city loses its power. The successful Omaha warlord is the one who creates mutual dependency with the surrounding agricultural communities. They provide security and market access. The farmers provide grain. The relationship is coercive but functional. By day 90, Omaha is either the most powerful warlord capital in the central United States, or it's been destroyed by competing interests fighting over the grain and the military assets. There's no middle ground. Omaha either dominates the region or it's a crater. The strategic value is too high for it to exist as minor player. Norfolk, the Atlantic warlord. Norfolk Naval Station, the largest naval base in the world. When the collapse happens, there are 30 to 40 naval vessels in port. Aircraft carriers, destroyers, submarines, amphibious assault ships. The entire Atlantic fleet concentrated in single location. Whoever controls Norfolk controls more military hardware than most countries possess. The naval personnel face impossible choice: maintain order and protect the base, or abandon posts and protect families. Some stay, some leave. By week 2, the base is operating at maybe 40% personnel strength, but the ships are still there, the weapons are still there, the fuel is still there, and someone is in control of all of it. The civilian city around the base is strategically positioned: Atlantic coast, deep water port, Chesapeake Bay access. This is where trade with Europe arrives, if trade with Europe still exists. This is where naval power projects into the Atlantic. This is where the coastal defense is based. Norfolk controls the entire mid-Atlantic coast by virtue of geography and military assets. The consolidation is violent. Different naval units have different loyalties. Different officers have different ideas about what their duty requires. Some want to maintain constitutional order. Some want to protect their local communities. Some see opportunity for power. The fighting is brief but intense. By week 4, one faction controls the base. Usually the faction that secured the carriers first, because carriers are floating cities with their own power generation and massive symbolic weight. The Norfolk Warlord isn't running traditional warlord operation. This is naval power. Blue Water Navy. The ability to project force anywhere on the Atlantic coast or the Caribbean. This is different from controlling a city or a river. This is controlling the ocean. The tribute isn't collected at checkpoints. It's collected from coastal cities that need naval protection or naval access. By day 90, Norfolk Warlord is conducting actual naval operations, protecting trade ships, blockading hostile ports, conducting amphibious raids on coastal cities that refuse to pay tribute. This is Warlord who inherited superpower military and is using it exactly like historical navies have always been used: to control trade, to extract tribute, to project power beyond land-based limitations. The vulnerability is fuel. Naval vessels burn tremendous amounts of fuel. The base has reserves, but not unlimited reserves. The Norfolk Warlord has to secure fuel supplies, or the fleet becomes static defense instead of mobile power projection. The Warlord who solves the fuel problem owns the Atlantic. The Warlord who doesn't solve it watches their power decline as the fuel runs out and the ships become stationary targets. Pittsburgh, the Steel Fortress. Pittsburgh sits where 3 rivers meet. The Allegheny and the Monongahela form the Ohio at Pittsburgh. This is natural fortress. Attacking Pittsburgh means crossing rivers and fighting uphill through valleys. The geography has made Pittsburgh defensible for 300 years. The collapse doesn't change the geography. The industrial infrastructure is different from other cities. Pittsburgh was steel. The mills are largely gone, but the knowledge remains. The machine shops, the fabrication capability, the metalworking expertise. When collapse prevents imports of manufactured goods, Pittsburgh can still manufacture. Not at scale, not like before. But functional manufacturing that other cities can't replicate. The Appalachian coal is close, the natural gas is close, the energy resources that powered Pittsburgh historically are still there. The Warlord who controls Pittsburgh controls energy resources and manufacturing capability simultaneously. This creates self-sufficient industrial base that can produce weapons, tools, and manufactured goods that become valuable in collapse. The seizure is complicated by terrain. The city is spread across valleys and hills. Different neighborhoods are geographically isolated from each other. The first month is neighborhood warlords controlling their valleys. The second month is consolidation, as stronger warlords absorb weaker ones. By day 60, usually 2 or 3 major factions control different parts of the city. By day 90, one warlord has emerged dominant through violence or alliance. The Pittsburgh Warlord is running different operation than river warlords or naval warlords. This is Industrial Warlord, manufacturing weapons and trading them for resources, providing fabrication services for other warlords who need things built. The Pittsburgh Warlord is arms dealer and machine shop for the entire Midwest and Northeast. The tribute comes from providing essential services that no one else can provide. The weakness is agriculture. The valleys don't produce enough food to feed the city. The Pittsburgh Warlord has to trade manufactured goods for food aggressively. This creates dependency on agricultural regions that limits the Warlord's leverage. Can't price gouge customers who control your food supply? The balance is delicate and requires diplomatic skill as much as military power. San Antonio, the Southern King. San Antonio is massive military infrastructure. Fort Sam Houston, Lackland Air Force Base, Randolph Air Force Base, JBSA. The concentration of military installations and personnel is second only to Norfolk. When collapse happens, San Antonio has the military assets to dominate the entire Southwest. The Mexican border is 60 miles south. The collapse doesn't stop at the border. Mexico collapses too. The question is whether organized Mexican power moves north or organized American power moves south, or both simultaneously creating contested border region. San Antonio is the strategic position that controls this entire dynamic. The control of Interstate 35 and Interstate 10 makes San Antonio crossroads for what's left of land transportation in the south. Dallas to the north, Houston to the east, El Paso to the west, Monterey to the south. Everything moving between these cities moves through San Antonio. The warlord who controls San Antonio controls land trade routes for Texas and northern Mexico. The military consolidation happens faster than other cities. The command structure is more intact. The bases are more organized. By week 3, military authorities have secured the city. The question is whether these military authorities remain loyal to constitutional order or whether they fragment into warlord factions. Usually by week 6, one senior officer has emerged as de facto military governor. Whether they maintain pretense of constitutional authority or openly declare independent power varies by personality and circumstance. By day 90, San Antonio Warlord controls the largest intact military force in the Southwest, not biggest in total personnel, but best organized, best equipped, most coherent command structure. This military power is being used to secure territory, control trade routes, and establish tributary relationships with surrounding cities and regions. The agricultural productivity of Texas Hill Country and South Texas means San Antonio can feed itself better than most urban centers. The warlord doesn't need to import as much food as other city warlords. This independence gives negotiating power. The San Antonio warlord can dictate terms to Houston or Dallas without worrying about starvation if they cut off trade. The challenge is the border. Mexican cartels are organized, armed, and experienced at operating without government oversight. They're not going to ignore the collapse of American border security. The San Antonio warlord is either fighting Mexican incursion, allying with Mexican power structures, or establishing hybrid control, where American military power and Mexican cartel power create shared governance over the border region. Any of these outcomes makes San Antonio the gateway between collapsed United States and collapsed Mexico, with all the trade and power that implies. Why these 7 and not others? New York is too big. Los Angeles is too big. Chicago is too big. These cities require massive resource imports to function. When supply chains break, megacities collapse. They're not defendable. They're not self-sufficient. They're death traps. The populations evacuate or die. By day 90, the megacities are mostly empty ruins, controlled by whoever's desperate or crazy enough to stay. Smaller cities are too small. They don't control anything essential. They're not strategic choke points. They're not transportation hubs. They're just cities. The warlord who controls Boise or Tulsa or Louisville has local power but no regional significance. They're not collecting tribute from other territories. They're just surviving and controlling their immediate area. The 7 that become warlord capitals are the perfect size and perfect position, large enough to have resources and population, small enough to be controllable, positioned at strategic choke points or controlling essential resources. Defensible geography. These characteristics are permanent. The cities that have them in peacetime have them in collapse. The warlords who recognize which cities have these characteristics and seize them fast enough become the regional powers. The pattern across all collapses. EMP, pandemic, economic collapse, nuclear war, doesn't matter. The collapse type changes details, but not the pattern. These 7 cities become warlord capitals within 90 days because they control things that matter in collapse: water, rivers, ports, grain, military assets, manufacturing, trade routes. The warlords who emerge aren't necessarily evil. They're organizational. They're whoever consolidates power fast enough to control the strategic position. Sometimes that's military officers maintaining order. Sometimes that's criminal organizations exploiting chaos. Sometimes that's civilian leaders improvising new authority structures. The personality changes. The position remains constant. By day 90, if you're mapping power in collapsed United States, you're marking these 7 cities as capitals of emerging warlord states. New Orleans, controlling the Gulf trade. Memphis, controlling the river crossing and the Delta agriculture. Denver, controlling Western water. Omaha, controlling the grain belt. Norfolk, controlling the Atlantic. Pittsburgh, controlling Appalachian industry. San Antonio, controlling the southern trade routes and the border. The rest of the map is tributary territories, cities that pay one of the 7 warlords for access to what they control, or cities that are fighting to avoid paying, or empty cities that collapsed and evacuated. But power concentrates in these 7 positions because geography and infrastructure created permanent strategic advantage that survives any collapse and rewards whoever seizes it first. 90 days, 7 cities, 7 warlords. The map of power in collapsed America, not determined by preparation or ideology or military strength in abstract, determined by who controlled the strategic positions when the music stopped and everyone had to find a chair. The 7 warlords found the 7 chairs that matter. Everyone else is standing and paying tribute to whoever's sitting down.